today's conversation. Today's roundtable discussion features Gillis Education's founder and CEO and my beautiful wife, Tiffany Gillis Brown, and DC State Board of Education candidate for Ward 7, Dontrell Smith. Tiffany, do you have any open remarks?
Thanks, Anthony. I do. I'm just really excited to be hosting this along with my husband, Anthony. And as he said, my name is Tiffany Gillis Brown. I am the founder and CEO of Gillis Education. And I am not a classroom teacher, but I am an educator. I started tutoring back when I was like 13 years old, just for extra money, extra gas money. But it really turned into something I love and that I'm passionate about. And not to mention, my mom is a retired teacher. She taught for 30 years. So I get the education bug and that passion from her. And back when I started Gillis Education, we focused primarily on providing quality and affordable tutoring services for students in the DC area. But almost 10 years later, we are still offering tutoring services, of course, but we've also expanded our offerings to include things like academic coaching and special education advocacy services, and more recently, education research and policy analysis, which again is something that I'm very passionate about. And all of this is to really develop scholars academically, develop them personally, prepare them for higher education and life post higher education, and to really be that liaison between the student's home, their family, and the community. And so this first roundtable event, this is our first event ever, roundtable event ever, and I'm just really grateful for the opportunity to with Dontrell Smith. And we want to talk about all things education in DC. But before I formally introduce Dontrell, I do want to provide a little bit more background about why we're specifically holding this event. And so, as a full-time government employee, federal government employee, as a recent law school graduate, I know how important, voting and being informed is, and not obviously just at the national level, when we choose our president, but also at the local level. And that means really getting to know the laws and policies that our local candidates are putting forward and getting to know the people intimately. And I personally have been, I'm guilty of not being fully involved in local politics as I should be, even as a federal government employee, even as a recent law school graduate, knowing how important it is. I am guilty of not actually being fully involved in local politics. So here I am. And professionally, of course, Gillis Education's one of Gillis Education's goals is to provide information to the public, to break it down, to really learn the educational policies and laws that impact students and their families and their communities. And frankly, this roundtable is an opportunity for me to learn as well. So I'm just really excited. And relatedly, another goal is to actually hold policymakers accountable for the decisions that they make, and elected officials accountable for whatever they're promising to its citizens. And so there's the information piece of Gillis Education's policy analysis and research, but there's also the accountability piece. And we want to truly advocate for our students, for our families, for our parents. And we want to actually play a role in advising policymakers and elected officials on what we should all be doing to make sure that our students' academic journeys are good ones and ones that are worthwhile and robust and all of that good stuff. Aside from a professional stake in, being invested in politics, I am also a mom of a 9-month-old. I am a DC resident and I live in Ward 7 currently. So I have a personal stake in the success of education and the success of DC public schools here. So again, I'm really grateful to have Dontrell Smith here to speak about his vision for DC. And I'm grateful that my husband agreed to moderate this discussion. And just to give a brief bio of Dontrell, he's a native Washingtonian, and he lives in the Marshall Heights community. He's a proud product of DCPS, and he is a two-time Howard grad, I believe. Yeah. A bachelor, he got his Bachelor of Business Administration, and also a master's in Business Administration and Accounting. He's a father of two sons that are also DCPS proud, and a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. And he's currently a certified government financial manager, and he was a former substitute teacher in DCPS. So thank you so much, Dontrell, for being here. I really appreciate it. And I'll hand it back over to Anthony. Anthony, I think you're muted. Oh, can you try to unmute again?
Sorry, guys. Can you hear me now?
You're good.
Perfect. Dontrell, we're so happy to have you participate in today's first, roundtable discussion on the future of education in DC. Seeing that you're a candidate for Ward 7's State Board of Education, SBOE. Can you give us a little bit more information about who you are as a candidate and what do you see as the role of SBOE in DC public schools?
First, thank you both the Browns for allowing me to be here today. State Board of Education is a policy-driven board. It's not like a traditional school board or school board from any other states across the country. We don't decide the day-to-day duties and roles and responsibilities in DC public schools. We don't select the chancellor or the superintendent at DC public schools. So it's more so policy-driven, set the academic standards, graduation requirements, revise the standards such as social studies, the history books, the ELA, the mathematics, things of that nature, the teachers' qualifications, the certifications, as well as advocate for vocational funding and things of that nature. So it's more so a policy driven, but it's not embedded like a traditional state board. We lost that control back in 2008 when the mayor decided to take control of the DC public schools. So now the mayor has control over the school system. So the State Board of Education actually lost their authority, but they didn't lose their voice back in 2008. A little bit about me, like your wife stated today, Ms. Brown. My name is Dontrell Smith. I'm a native Washingtonian, a product of DC public schools. My mother actually had 6 children, and 5 of us graduated from DC public schools, and all 6 of us graduated from Howard University. So I know the effort of DC public schools. I know the product and what it has produced. I grew up in the Marshall Heights community. I'm a graduate of Wilson Senior High School, and also, like she stated, a 2-time graduate of Howard University. And I'm a father of 2 sons, 130, 113. I'm here for the long haul. I'm actually trying to become the first Black parent to sit on the State Board of Education with school-aged children. And I'm running on the 3 principles. You probably see the 3 apples behind me, but the 3 principles, like Ms. Brown, which you touched on, accountability. We got to hold people accountable. It's 2020. It's not 1994. It shouldn't take us to have a pandemic for us to realize there's this huge education equity gap that we got throughout the city. As adults, we notice the disparity in the economic and retail development, how we have a lack of groceries and retail establishment. We could spend our own dollar in Ward 7, but in the children aspect, we notice it in the education, but we got to hold people accountable. When I talk about accountability, it's that schools is only as strong as your community. ANC, civic associations, PTA organizations, LSATs, education council, State Board of Education rep, the council member, the mayor, everyone got to be held accountable, because we only could build the schools if we start within the root cause and focusing on the foundation of the community. My second point is transparency. When we talk about transparency, we got to learn to be proactive, not reactive. We got to know a lot of issues that's going on within the school system before it's too little too late. Like I touched on, the pandemic. We knew that we didn't have laptops and tablets for every student. So it shouldn't take us to realize this pandemic that we were lacking the resources to support the students in Ward 7. But how will we know that we don't have the right leader that's leading this plan? And we talk about transparency is a top-down approach. You know, everything can't be solved over social media. You know, we look at something that's going on right now in Ward 7. We got a halfway house coming, you know, but we realized it was coming to this ward too little too late because it wasn't transparent. We wasn't proactive. Now we're reactive. We're trying to stop the halfway house, but we got to learn to be transparent. You know, it goes back to the community. We got to communicate everything, not Facebook, not Twitter, not Instagram, but sometimes you got to write, you got to call, you got to send letters down, you got to testify in front of the city council down in the Wilson building. And the biggest thing I talk about is education equity. You know, that's what everybody talk about. Education equity. When I say education equity, schools should be like Chick-fil-A. You know, regardless of what Chick-fil-A you go to, everything's the same. Customer service, the food, the pricing, it's closed on Sundays. They even write your name on your order and bring it out to your car, regardless of the location. So regardless of what school you pick in the District of Columbia, whether it's public, charter, Northwest, Southeast, Southwest, Ward 7, 3, 8, regardless of the zip code, regardless of the quadrant, regardless of the ward, all schools need to be the same. We need to make sure every child gets the best quality education. That's when the biggest point about education equity, but it starts, and all those come as a whole, you know, and I picked blue and white because it represents two things. My elementary colors was blue and white. My college colors was blue and white. And blue and white signifies a lot of things, you know, courage, proud. And then also the three apples, you know, it's DC flag has 3 stars, right? I got 3 apples. It represents my 3 points, and it stands out to represent education. So when you see it, it's like, oh, it's education. You see the 3 apples of education. I'm trying to bring change to the ward. And one thing about me that makes me different than any other candidate, I actually have a plan. I have a plan January 2nd, once I'm sworn in, roll up the sleeves. Let's get ready because we will improve the schools in Ward 7 in 2 years. It's a 4-year term, but I guarantee you the schools would drastically change within 2 years because I'm going to bring change. Like I say, I got a 3-0 and I got a 13. I'm here for the long haul. So I'm here if any decision, I got a direct impact with any decision I make. I'm not just making a decision and I don't got no kids and I'm not invested. No, we're going to improve the school systems in the District of Columbia, regardless of the ward. And that's the biggest thing that I want to bring. So I'm bringing a strong, confident, passionate, independent voice. I don't have ties to people. That's 2 things I care about, education and the youth. And that's the most important thing that we really got to focus on. So I want to thank you today for allowing me to speak, to talk about various issues throughout the District of Columbia, across the country, education disparity, and things of that nature. Thank you.
Well, Dontrell, thank you so much for providing the tenets of your, your campaign and really the symbolic significance of your run. And we will dive into, the specific elements of your plan. But first, what propelled you to run for this, this position, and when did you make that decision?
Well, I will say this, I've been in the federal government almost my whole career. I'm off every Friday in the federal government. The last 5 years, I've been a substitute teacher in DC public schools, elementary through high school. I've seen the disparity throughout the District of Columbia. And I've seen how one side of the city is learning totally different. They're on the same grade. I've been, one of my oldest son friends just graduated middle school and doesn't know the 7 continents or the 5 oceans. That's huge. You just graduated middle school and you're progressing to high school and you don't know the 7 continents or the 5 oceans. So it's things like that I noticed that, wow, there's no way we should challenge our kids to make sure students get the best amount of resources. I've been a substitute teacher. I've been inside the school system. I've seen that HVAC issues, windows don't open, teachers don't have the resources within the classroom. It was a couple of times I go to a school and they'll leave a special note like, hey, can you bring a pack of paper for your class? I'm the substitute. So the substitute got to come to school with a pack of paper just to make copies for the class that I'm supposed to teach for that school day. It's those type of things, the small issues. Then it's the bigger issues. You realize it. Got to make sure. I've noticed a lot of teachers that I talk throughout the District of Columbia, they don't feel like they had the support of the leadership. They don't feel as though they get the right professional development. Your career, I don't know what career that you have, but we always have continuing professional education, maximizing, making sure that we investing in our staff and investing into our profession. And I feel as though that as State Board of Education, you should push to make sure DC got a great deal of universities in the area that we could partner with these universities that come in on these professional development days in the School of Education from GW, Georgetown, American, Howard University, and come in and teach soft skills, give some refresher courses, because sometimes, no one should stop learning. You can always learn something new every day. But when I ran, I realized that I had to first, get the clearance with my job. It's a nonpartisan position because I really wanted to run. I really wanted to bring change. I really wanted to make sure, bring a strong voice, a passionate voice, somebody that's really going to advocate and push for these students and hold people accountable. I'm an auditor by trade. No one likes auditors, regardless of what it is. When you hear auditor, they know they coming to find something, right? Whether it's the IRS auditor or auditor in your company, auditors are I've been internal audit. And my job is to go in there and find the root cause, find the issues, and find out what's going to go on and do that. So I'm running because I want to bring change. I want to bring a new direction. The current leadership, nothing against the current leadership, but you got to be accountable. You got to be transparent. You got to push. It's not just about showing up once a month and showing up and just for the quarterly meeting. No, we got to hold people. And I said on my grassroots campaign, I'm running door to door. No child left behind, no door left behind. And I'm going to try to bring change in the ward because it's something we need. So I'm running because I really want to see a difference. And I feel as though the people that was in the leadership roles within the ward has not done a sufficient amount of job. Yes, they advocated. Yes, they tried to push. But it don't start with just one testimony. It don't start with one advocacy. No, you got to put the pressure on people. Because if we wait for people outside the ward to help this ward, we're going to be waiting a long time. So you got to start in there. And I'm the leader that we need. I'm going to be passionate and I'm going to drive and I'm going to push what we need to do.
Got you. Thank you. Are there any specific issues that, really sparked your run? You gave some, philosophical, ideological reasons, but are there 1, 2, or 3 reasons that you really want to address that you feel like SBOE is not doing well?
Well, Ward 7 students travel the furthest in any ward to school outside the ward, average of 3.4 miles. Even myself, I travel, my son, it takes me a 35-minute commute just to take my son to school. I shouldn't have to do that. Just like you, when you became a homeowner, you wanted to go to school in your community. I grew up in my neighborhood school, and you got to want to improve the schools. You see, the biggest thing, the literacy rate, as an ANC commissioner, I could count on almost 2 hands how many residents I met who childs was just getting passed by and they wasn't able to read and write. Literacy rate, regardless, and you got to look at this like, you don't read in just English. You read in all your subjects. And the importance of reading is very key. People realize, Ward 7 ain't the only schools that been losing librarians. Librarian that people got to realize is different than just looking up a call number in a library. Librarians is a specialized trained specialist in reading that helps prove the Lexile level. So why if the literacy rate is going down in Ward 7 and 8, or it's not improving like the majority of the city, why are we cutting librarians? That's an additional reading specialist. Like I said, you're reading all your subjects. So I noticed within the Ward 7, so within the ward, I want to improve the literacy rate. I want to look at a comprehensive plan to see what's the strengths, what's the weaknesses, because every school is different. Let's be honest. Not every public school is good. Not every public school is bad. Not every charter school is good. Not every charter school is bad. Every school is different. So every school has their own unique challenges. So I can't say I got this one plan that's going to fix all the schools. No, because everyone is different. So when going in there, the biggest thing in Ward 7, I want to improve the literacy rate. I want to try to attain and make sure that students are on the right career path from elementary up to the progression of high school. We got to fix the feeder pattern. It was one school in Ward 7. And I went to a back to school night, and the principal stated, we're the only Ward 7 school that teaches Arabic. And yes, it was unique. But then you look at it, you're the only Ward 7 school that teach Arabic. So now once you get to middle school, you got to go to Spanish or French, right? So now it's like you done did about 3 to 5 years of this language, but then you get to high school and middle school, you don't have that language to offer. So it's things that we got to make sure when we look at all these schools, we look at a whole holistic approach and see how does it progress the child from elementary, pre-K3, all the way to 12th grade to make sure they're on the right career path for success, regardless. And I tell people this, college may not be for everyone. You can't say that. So we need to make sure we also push vocational schools. Doctors need electricians. Electricians need lawyers. Regardless of what side of the fence you end on, you're going to need each other. So we're going to need the trades. We're going to need the professionals. People, I just had a plumber come to my house today, right? But then I have people come tax season that need someone to do their taxes. So we always need each other. So regardless of what career, what avenue you push, we got to make sure that we're pushing our kids to the full potential, to making sure when they get a high school diploma, hopefully they come out with a 2-year, possibly accredited degree or like associates, but make sure they on the right career path to be successful in any avenue that they choose from start to finish.
Tiffany, to fold you into the conversation as an educator and advocate yourself, are there any other concerns that you've, that you're knowledgeable of or thinking about, in addition to literacy rates and faculty retention and vocational opportunities beyond the 4-year college degree?
Mm-hmm. So my main thing, and if you follow me on Instagram, if you follow our, my story, it's the literacy rate for me. It's literacy and like really pushing our parents, the clients that I work with, to just do little things to help out their students, their children's literacy rate. Because as Dontrell said, literacy is really the foundation for success in everything, not just English or science or government class, but also in life, right? Like we are asking people to get involved in local politics. We're asking them to be informed citizens. If you can't read, if you can't write, it's hard to, or maybe impossible to function in society. And I work with a lot of students, and this is just, and I'll circle back to your question, Anthony, about, other things that we can be focused on. But the students that I work with, even some that are not labeled as a special education student or special needs, even they are struggling with reading. Even they are struggling with writing. And so they are, the ones that don't need the extra help, but they actually do. And so imagine the special education students where they are. You throw in a pandemic, and what happens then? It gets even worse. So I am at the point, and I don't know if I mentioned this at the beginning, but Gillis Education does work nationally. So we have students in other states, and we have students of all races. I am in real time, when I'm working with my students, seeing the discrepancy. I'm seeing the white students in Raleigh, North Carolina versus, my Black students here in DC going to public school, or going to even some of them that are in private school, because some private schools, of course, are not as good as some public schools. All schools are different, but I am seeing the discrepancy. And so that is something that really tugs at my heart, is seeing my 7th, 8th, and 9th graders not being able to read a book that is meant for a 3rd grader. And then asking them when they're 18 to actually go out into the world and be productive and be, an informed citizen. It's just not going to happen. So I think that's one of my passions, is improving the literacy rate. But also I mentioned special education advocacy as well. This pandemic is really making it difficult for my special education students and my parents who are caring for their students with special needs. So that is, I think those are the two main things that I would like a lot of focus on. And obviously I think everyone will, attest to this, that it has been difficult, but this pandemic, and even like the digital literacy piece of it too, like being able to actually use the computer and like knowing how to troubleshoot, all of those things are skills that my students a lot of times are lacking in, and it scares me. So I'll stop there.
And Tiffany, can you make the connection for me and for our listeners today? literacy rates and how that is impacted or shaped by governmental agencies and divisions like SBOE. So what can SBOE do to improve literacy rates, to improve the interaction and information gathering during the pandemic?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and I actually might shoot that back to you, Dontrell, because he may know more about specifically what DC State Board of Education can do. But I do echo his concerns about there not being, enough staff or, professional development for teachers who, and honestly, we can get into a whole discussion about teacher pay and all of that, but really like teachers being able to actually teach. I heard on a recent panel that one teacher was just kind of burned out from a lot of testing, burned out from all of this, obviously the virtual learning, but teachers not really being able to do their job because they're having to juggle a lot. They're having to buy their own materials and all of that. And they have like 30 or 40 kids. And so a lot of teachers are not able to give, attention to specific students in need to actually build up that literacy rate. So I don't know if it's something where we look at staffing or if we look at like employing more reading specialists who can actually devote one-on-one time or even like small group learning with students. And so obviously that comes with discussions around funding and teacher pay and all of that. But I think also there's a whole thing that we can also get into about how to equip parents with either the time and resources to actually help their students as well. A lot of I can only speak for a lot of my clients, but they, either don't have the time to or the energy, and it's not their fault. It's our culture and it's what we're dealing with, and especially with the pandemic, they don't have the time or the energy to be able to help their students read. So it's how can we equip and empower parents as well? So how do we empower teachers and staff, but also how do we empower our parents? And if they're not able to help in the home, what more can we do? So
to that end, Dontrell, how do you envision getting that, knowing the needs and getting that information from parents and students and the public to actually address as a member of SBOE?
So like I stated earlier, as an internal controls auditor, the most important thing we do before we even start any deep dive testing, we do surveys, we do interviews, we do questionnaires. So we got to go inside the school systems, do whatever we take, push surveys to the teachers, put surveys to the parents, ask students to fill it out. We need to figure out what's the root cause, how to fix. So we shouldn't know, like it goes back, we should know that a pandemic, we realized a lot of parents didn't have Wi-Fi at home or connectivity. That's what surveys you find out. It goes back with the transparency. That way we keep an open dialogue. We know what's going on, the pressing issues day to day. That way we could bridge the gap with looking at the digital divide that we're going to touch on later. So you got to go and do surveys, do risk assessments, and control and find out what exactly is going on and what issues and what they need in the classrooms. I know Ms. Brown touched on it in regards to how teachers got to buy their own supplies. Maybe we could do stipends, give them a stipend every quarterly, because teachers east of the river may got to buy more supplies than other boards. They may got to buy supply. They may don't got glue for the whole class, scissors for the whole class, and they got it come out of their pocket. So maybe we need to work with giving them extra incentives or pushing more additional funding, which we'll talk about. Because a lot of times we talk about anyone across the city talking about education, they say the issue is funding, right? The amount of resources available. So let's look at the budget. Let's make sure we giving the schools that's more at risk, getting them additional funding to make sure they get the supplemental supplies that they needed to help them to succeed. I know you talked about the special needs. My son, when he first started DC Public Schools, he had an IEP. He had a speech language problem. He had to see a speech delay, and a mild speech delay because as a child he had reoccurring ear infection. So we had to put tubes in his ears. And the first set of tubes blocked his airway. So the way he was hearing words, it was sounding as if he was underwater. So once we got those tubes out, we put a second set in. So then he was able to hear properly. So we had a mild. So his first couple of years in DC Public Schools, he had to see a speech pathologist. So now I'm thinking about it now in this current pandemic. No students shouldn't go back to school, but we need to make sure that students receive the right amount of services at home that they're supposed to receive within the classroom, because they still need to meet their goals. A lot of DC is facing a lot of legal issues because with these IDAs and IPAs, we're not supporting the students to their full potential, what they need. So we got to make sure that's a legal binding document that we got to ensure that all students receive the services and the therapy that they need, the occupational therapy, the speech pathologists, things of that nature. And so we could keep students as long as home, but make sure they get all the amount of resources that they do need. So that's one area. But we talked about the literacy rate. Students need to go back to reading novels, reading books. Like I said, we take almost a 30-minute commute for my son to go to school. And in that 30 minutes, we don't listen to the radio. I make him read a book. I turn the radio off and he read out loud. And I ask him questions. What was this about? What was this?
I just want to say, I'm sorry to interrupt, but my mom is probably, if she's watching, she's probably smiling because I went to PG County Public Schools. For 2 years, I went to Kettering Elementary, and my mom actually taught at that school. So on the way to school, that 15-minute commute to Kettering, she would make me read out loud in the car. And this was like 3rd and 4th grade. And every day.
It definitely makes a difference. And so we read, and I asked some questions. I'm like, what was this? And he like, I said, I didn't hear that. Because you're reading out loud to me. How you make up something you reading out loud? So commute from 30 minutes back and forth, you don't read an hour and you didn't even realize it. But we got to make sure we push and challenge. Like I said, you should learn something new every day. I always tell my son, read a book. It was various books I made him read. I made him read investment books, how to save money, the value of $1. It was books like that teaching them how to get ahead, how to save money, the importance of money. The root cause of all evils is money. People want new jobs because of money. Teachers want to go to another opportunity because they want more money. Students don't have the resources because we don't get the money. Money is always, regardless of however spectrum, whatever side we on, is going to go down to the money. And that's why I go back. People say, oh, you're accountant by trade. How would you make a difference in education? I'm a certified government financial manager in federal, state, and local government. We got a lot of budget issues. We may need someone that's on the board that's going to crunch and grind the numbers, that's going to actually look at it and make sure the schools are getting the right amount of money they supposed to receive. And that's what we need. We got to look at the state board of education has 9 representatives. It's 8 people, and then there's one from each ward and 1 at-large member. It could be a very good diverse board because collectively we work together for a root cause, which is the education foundation of the District of Columbia. 1 representative from the ward could be a lawyer because there's a lot of legal issues that we're progressing. Me coming from Ward 7, I could be the accountant. I could be the man with the business background that's going to look at the numbers, going to grind the numbers. That's also a parent. So I'm looking at it a different perspective. We may got some educators. So everyone could play their part and play their role because collectively we'll be stronger together and we can all bridge the gap. So, but yes, the literacy, that's definitely key. Students got to read more. I remember growing up, and I know y'all could test for it. We had the Book It program. The Book It program, you read a certain number of books, you go to pizza and get that personal pan pizza.
Always. Always.
And I think that concern for literacy rates, the widening achievement gap, which Tiffany spoke on a little bit earlier in her opener, that might be driving some of the concern, or the biggest concern right now about reopening schools. There has been studies to say that especially Black students, Latino students, people of color, that their literacy rates, that achievement gap actually widens when they're not in the classroom. That they are learning when they're in the classroom during the school year, but over the summer, that loss of knowledge, that retention isn't there. So Mayor Bowser has has already announced that she's planning to reopen some schools next month for some students, really focusing on students with disabilities, but also for students that just need to go back into the school. How do you, Dontrell, feel about the plan as it is, kind of set out right now? And what have you been hearing from the community?
Well, one thing I would say is no one should be going back to school right now. It's a huge risk. We're playing Russian roulette with our child lives. We don't have a vaccine for this current pandemic that we're facing. At my current job, we're still not in the office, and we're adults, and we're able to wear a mask all day. So you're telling to send children back to school in the middle of a pandemic, and let's be honest, kids gonna be kids. They may pull each other's mask off, things of that nature. So we could put every step in place in the school system, fix the HVAC systems, make sure the windows are opening, proper social distancing. But DC doesn't have busing. So in order to get to school, you got to catch public transportation. So a child could contract the virus on their way to school. Not even so before they even get to school, they could contract it. So we're rushing it back. And it surprises me that Maria Bowser, as a mother and as a parent, will want to send children back to school. Typically think she'll understand the risk that we'll take. And I tell people, I think we sacrifice children going back to school on time to open up the economy. We bailed these businesses out over the summer because we was doing the unemployment rate that was going on, and how we was bailing them out and giving families unemployment benefits. So we opened up the businesses. We were fine with just going to the grocery store and Target. But once you open back up the businesses, because let's be honest, adults, we're going to do whatever is best to keep our kids out of harm's way. Don't touch nothing, wash your hands, do this. But it's the adults that want to go out to L'Oreal Plaza, U Street, to catch up with their girlfriends in the brunch. So it's things of that nature that we has been accustomed to. But sending these children back is definitely not a good. I've been in these schools, so I know a lot of these schools is not equipped. A lot of these schools are still not modernized, so they still got old buildings. My sister's a nurse in the DC public school system, so we can't even effectively contact trace residents that contract the virus. How are we going to do it? If students go back to school, then we look at the area of we can't even properly social distance at home if we contract the virus. A lot of students in 7 and 8, we have one bathroom, one kitchen, one common area. So we co-mingling in a different area. So we can't even properly isolate for the 14 days like other residents within the District of Columbia. But I definitely don't think we should. Granted, as a parent, I watched my son his 8th grade year, not able to see his friends. Want to see, his first day of 8th grade is like the first day of 9th grade and senior year. You would love to go back to see your friends, but it's not the right place. It's not the right time. Granted, it's a learning curve that we all got to go through. But we just looked recently, Boston and I believe Chicago, one of the 2 largest school districts in the country, opened up, went back to school. Now they're closing it back in because it's not ready. We don't have a plan in place. Until we have a plan, a vaccine, no one should be going back into schools. If the adults not going back to work, if DC government still working remotely from home and doing everything else, why should we send these students back to school? But you see the learning curve, and we notice, we got at-risk students that need their supplement. We got IEP students that need their resources. We got homeless children that needs their schooling, and they missing meals and things of that nature. But we still can't play Russian roulette with our child lives, and that's the biggest thing. So I don't agree with that. But what I would say in regards to the reopening and the mayor, she needs to bring everyone to the table, the key stakeholders, community members, parents, teachers, physicians, nurses, principals, janitors, HVAC specialists, things that know what's going on in these schools, and make sure that every school in the District of Columbia goes through a thorough inspection to make sure if it is placed. But right now we can't. My son middle school has 1,500 kids. 1,500 in a middle school. There's no way they could social distance with 1,500 middle school kids. So no, we shouldn't go back to school. No, and I think the mayor should really consider it and really think about reconsidering her plan, because you're forcing teachers to go back. So even if you force teachers back, who's going to work with their kids at home? Because they may go to different schools. They're not allowed to go back. We got to look at the whole spectrum. Yes, don't make a rush decision. Don't let the government press you to open it back up. But I would say, look at this. So DC has 4 four revenues that they use that they could disperse in the event of a state of emergency. We have a good surplus of amount of dollars. We have approximately about $1.43 billion in regards to funds that DC could use that could help support this current situation that we're going through. I want to pull up the numbers to be exact, and because it's a real touching. I saw the numbers. So we have four different reserve funds for emergency situations that could really help and prevail during the state of emergency. So once Mayor Bowser declared DC as a state of emergency, we have money as surplus that we could dip into and cash in. So we have about $1.43 billion that we could use to allocate to help close the gap. We could move those funds to give everyone laptops. School should be 1-to-1. You know, for every student, it should be one laptop. We shouldn't be sharing tablets in 2020. You know, we could make sure that it's free Wi-Fi throughout the District of Columbia. You know, other states, I think in Tennessee, city in Tennessee was able to have Wi-Fi spots within the neighborhood, because you shouldn't have to pay more money to get faster quality internet. You know, it shouldn't. We should have to pay for that to get faster quality internet. I should have to pay an extra $30 just so I could get a different broadband. No, everyone, you shouldn't. That's a necessity. We definitely need that. Just like breathing air. You know, you can't charge for certain things. So to improve that, DC should help close the gap and looking at the different revenue sources that we do have for the surplus of money to reallocate those funds that we have to help close the digital gap. Granted, we couldn't find $11 million in the budget, that operating budget that we currently have, but we have a surplus of money that we could use at $1.43 billion, like I stated, that we could close the digital divide and the gap that we currently have in the District of Columbia.
Yeah,
that doesn't require. Go ahead.
And I will say that just to be clear and fair, that Mayor Bowser has suggested some mitigating actions to kind of mitigate the risks for contracting COVID and health concerns. And some of her actions includes updating schools' HVAC systems, scheduling a staggered arrival and dismissal times, and also exploring outdoor learning options. So there are a few suggestions that she has announced to mitigate some of those concerns that you're talking about, Dontrell. But to shift over to Tiffany, since you are working with students during the pandemic, you're seeing the issues just like Dontrell is seeing as a father. Do you think, how do you balance, the need for caution with the need to get students back into the classroom?
This is so tough. And when I have my tutoring sessions, I feel it. I feel like, okay, this student just really needs to get back into school. They really need that in-person contact. Even for some of my older students, but especially for my younger students, some of them are fine. Some of them, they get it. They even have parents who are privileged enough to work with them off screen and do things at home and over the weekend. But for a lot of my students, that's just not the reality. Parents are busy. They're either working from home or working outside of the home. And they have, service jobs, or they're essential workers, they're nurses, they're even teachers, some of them, and they're trying to manage virtual learning. And I just slowly see just the downhill spiral, basically, of these kids not learning. They're just kind of staring at the screen. Some of them, deciding to do work sometimes, deciding not to do work other times. Not really focusing. So again, some of them are making the most of it. They're making the best of the situation, and they're able to, stay on target. They're probably not where they would be, but they are doing pretty well given the circumstances. But, others, again, I'm just like, they really need in-person, somebody in their face, like in a good way, not necessarily like behavior problems, but, literally someone sitting there with them, reading to them. There's nothing like that in-person contact. And so I do struggle with this whole idea of going back to school. And I'm in healthcare. I see the COVID numbers all the time. I'm not speaking on behalf of the federal government here, of course. I'm speaking in my, personal and professional capacity as CEO of Gillis Education. But I do see, the concern as far as like health care. We do not have a vaccine yet, a safe vaccine yet. The numbers are going up, and the last thing we want to do is put our children, and especially our young children, our vulnerable children, and our teacher population at risk. And so just like a lot of parents and just like a lot of people, I am struggling with this balance. And so for me, I think maybe identifying the students who really need to potentially be in the classroom, maybe allowing them to go and to be there so that they won't further regress. But on the whole, I am completely with you, Dontrell. We do not need to go back until it is safe. And, our health comes first. Literacy, raising the literacy rate is great, but, being alive is even better. So I will say safety comes first and foremost, but I do think we need to get creative. And you mentioned, the revenue sources, right? The surplus.
Yeah. So I got that. So DC, so we have probably DC is lucky than most cities and states in the country. We have a huge surplus. Because of course we could possibly say because of the tickets and the speeding tickets, right? But we have 4 full reserve funds in the District of Columbia and 1.43 billion, like I stated earlier. So once Mayor Bowser declared it as a state of emergency. See, this goes back into my accounting background, how we could pull from different sources. So DC has 4 full reserve funds, emergency cash reserve, a contingency cash reserve, this is required by Congress, a fiscal stabilization reserve, and then also a cash flow reserve. So once we declared that, and Mayor Bowser declared it as a state of emergency, we could have pulled from that money and it wouldn't even impacted the current budget or the allocations that we have currently within DC government budget, because we had that as emergency, and we're in a major crisis throughout the country. So we could have that 1.43 billion just to get 11 million just to close the digital divide, or just to make or build learning hubs at these recreation fields. We could build learning hubs at these recreation centers, all these fields at these schools, and have different grades at different sites to help bring that we need. Maybe we don't have to go in the school building, but see what we could do. But we got a surplus of money that we really need to look at it and boil down to it, that it don't have to take a lot of different factors to take the money. We got it. It's a surplus. It's a pandemic. We had a state of emergency crisis. You declared it back in March. So let's go into that reserve fund.
Right. And I think that's my point in bringing that up is how can we get creative with that money to really, like, the people that don't want to come back, and maybe the students that don't really need it need to stay home. But how can we get creative with that money, with that surplus that you're talking about? How can we get creative with it and actually provide some really innovative solutions for our students, so that we are not, looking at a horrible regression. Obviously, there's going to be regression in achievement, but one that is devastating.
And if we get creative, hey, you see how gentrification is accelerated in the District of Columbia. Just how we're able to turn a parking lot to some high rises apartments. We should be able to, use that money and work with the office of the CIO, the Chief Information Officer, to build technology throughout the District of Columbia. Let's put up some more poles. Let's put up some Wi-Fi connections. Let's put up some public spaces that allow people to go on these learning hubs and go in here and get these. Let's issue laptops. It shouldn't be, like I said, it shouldn't take us a pandemic for us to realize that what's going on. This 2020, it's not 1994 when the internet got created. We knew what was going on and we need to fix it. But so innovative, I would say, because right now they're not trying to build the infrastructure with the IT aspect until probably like 2024, 2026. But right now, we need to fix the issue now. We could greatly, just like they turned the convention center into a testing center for in case we needed beds for the hospitalization rate. We could do the same overnight and build up stuff, and let's build up these technology walls and make sure every apartment building got Wi-Fi, any general common area, recreation centers got outdoor Wi-Fi, public libraries everywhere. It shouldn't be like this is the District of Columbia. We got, like I said, we got a surplus of money.
I will ask Dontrell, it might be too late to stop the reopening plan, but if you are elected and and it moves forward, to Tiffany's point, are you considering any creative solutions to mitigating the risk? And if you don't have any right now, how would you go about facilitating that conversation with for your constituents?
Well, I'm big on surveys. I'm big on questionnaires. I don't want to make that's how I got my platform. If I just came out with a platform, that's just my vision. I got to find out what's the residents' vision. So before I even make any decision, I will find out residents and send out, contact these principals. Hey, send out this questionnaire to your school system. Find out, get a good synopsis or a good about what's the root issue. What do you want? What will make parents feel safe? Whatever makes parents feel safe, because I'm the voice of the parents, the voice of the ward, the voice of the community. So I got to make sure my voice is a consensus voice and not just Dontrell Smith voice where I think what will help my kids. No, I'm fortunate I have a car. Most people don't have a vehicle. There's other factors that plays into the decision making. So we can't make this decision just based solely off one person. You got to make sure you have everyone at the table, parents, teachers, leadership, everyone. So in my approach, I will push out a survey on all these listservs, work with these civic associations, work with these ANCs, work with these groups that we got, these mini groups that we got on Facebook, Twitters, and push it out. Fill out a survey and find out, hey, parents, does your child go to Ward 7 school? What school? What's the biggest issue in the school? What would you like to see in the school? How do you feel bringing your child back to the school? Do you think it's safe? What is your, because that way we get it. Because Mara Bowser, she said, hey, we did survey. Let's see the results. I'm like with Missouri, show me state. Don't just tell me, show me what exactly that you got in the research that really showed these parents say this. Oh, so you telling me these Ward 7 and 8 parents specifically said they want to send their child back to school. You got to make sure you don't let people just tell you stuff. Even in my day-to-day work, even with my son work, how you got to this answer. Show your work. So show me how you got to this point that you really want to reopen. We look at all over the internet. The teachers, WTU, do not want to go back to school, because it's not safe. They said they talked to WTU. Who did you talk to in WTU? Because the president still says that they never talked to you, or y'all not sitting them at the table. So who is making these decisions? But it's still, like I said, it boils back to me. And it's really strange that Mara Bowser, who is a mother who has a child, will want to send students back to school. You'll think, at least as a parent, you will understand, because you wouldn't want to send your child back. So why would she want to send the whole city back? So definitely a survey, statistics, and making sure I got the whole ward's perspective before I even make any rational decision.
Yeah, and I will echo your point that you're not alone with not being on board with the reopening plan. As you said, the president of the Washington Teachers Union, who is Elizabeth Davis, said that she wasn't aware, that they weren't aware of the reopening plan, and that even school principals in the district and administrators weren't aware until the press release was sent out. So there have been concerns with communication, but next month, if students go back to school and you're elected, what's the one thing that you will do differently to make sure that that students are safe?
One thing I'll do to make sure students are safe is, first and foremost, before students even go back to school, I'm gonna go in all the schools in Ward 7. I'm gonna go in there way before, like if they say, hey, school's gonna open up February 2nd, January 2nd, once I take office, hopefully, I'm gonna go into schools January 2nd. I want to see all these schools. So I'm gonna make sure that all these schools are able is to really teach these students. We're not going to just throw these children back. Like I said, we're not playing Russian roulette with our child lives. So I want to make sure As an elected official, I will go into every Ward 7 school, public or charter, regardless of what it is, and look at it, see, and actually test. And when you become a homeowner, you do inspection of your house before you buy, because it's almost a 30-year commitment. So I'm gonna go in there and do a thorough inspection to make sure we got somebody, an outside, independent person going through all these schools and making sure that the schools are up to compliance to let these students back in. Like I said, it's a lot of schools. It's a great number of schools in Ward 7 that needs to be rebuilt. They need the HVAC systems. So we got to make sure go in there. So before I even say, hey, the school's going back, I'm gonna personally go in there. So then when I go back to the community, or I push something back, because it goes back to transparency. So it goes back to transparency. When I push it back to the community, I'm gonna say, hey, I went into 22 schools in Ward 7. 7 of them was up to compliance. The rest of them, the 15 was not. So therefore, we would not go back to school. And I'm gonna make sure we hold Gray accountable, Amelia Bowser accountable, everyone accountable, because we need to make sure that it's in the right standpoint for all students. You can't just make this decision. DC has a lot of schools in the District of Columbia. So I'm not gonna make this. Go ahead.
Quickly, because we're actually approaching the end of our conversation. This has been a great discussion, but just one quick last point, Dontrell, on this topic. For the voter that's listening and they don't have the the privilege of working from home during the pandemic, as Tiffany said, they might be an essential worker. They might not have an extended family that can take care of their child during the pandemic, or it could be an elderly family member that's available, but they can't facilitate virtual learning. What do you have to say to that parent that doesn't have any other option but for their child to go back to school?
Well, and it goes back to with the survey, and see if we could, like, it goes back to, first, education should always be the same within the district, right? So everyone should have a standardized education. So work to see if there could be some support groups, some groups that can help out caretakers. I know in other parts of the city, they're paying for teachers to come in, or some other trained educators to come in and help and support these students. So maybe we could offer support groups, or say, hey, do you need resources? You need someone to help out at home? Because like you say, you still got to provide a roof over your head. You still got to take care of the family. So see what steps we could take to see what would they most also feel comfortable with. Because you got to also keep in mind, with the decision you make, you don't know where this adult been prior to coming to your house, right? So you also got to make sure you still want to keep your health and safety at a risk too. So maybe if you could do a virtual session, push, but like you see, everyone not IT savvy. So it's a touchy topic, man, because it's a whole learning. Hey, I'm going through it right now. I'm still trying to do my day-to-day work as well as take it. And my son 13, and I still got to talk to him. So I can only imagine what the parents are going through.
Yeah.
And I will ask you, what do you think has been working with virtual learning and virtual distance learning, virtual education? What do you think have been some maybe highlights that maybe we can think about implementing permanently? Because I think it hasn't been all bad, right? It hasn't been all bad, at least for some. So what has been working well with distance learning so far?
And I will add to that, Dontrell, after you answer that question, I would love to get Tiffany's opinion on that question, seeing that she's been working with students and families during the pandemic too.
I would say this. One thing that's been working well is for my 3-year-old, my 13. It's two different. It's two different perspectives. But one thing that's been working, you realize the importance of a teacher. You realize what they go through. They go through a lot, and you really commend them. You don't know what their day-to-day life is until you see it. One thing is working, teachers are unique. They're authentic now. They're really trying to learn from a different aspect. It's hard to learn students when you don't really meet them for the first time. It's not the traditional classroom to build that thing, blended learning approaches. Now all the students are learning collectively together because everyone is at doing distance learning, virtual learning. Teachers receive more, like I said, more respect, more appreciation of the hard work that they do, that we go to, and a support role in the society. The quality of teaching has went up, the learning materials, the various different innovative ideas that they want to help out to bring. My son science teacher sent, hey, he need a banana, he needs some soy sauce, so now I'm at home doing these science experiments and things of that nature. So you know, it's more of a hands-on effect. So you still getting that presentation. They still doing assessments. I know that's a lot of big thing, and I think the district just dropped about assessments. But the good thing about the assessment is we could actually see as a whole how impactful this pandemic was. You know, if they were in the school, you know, you may have been on this reading level, but now at home, you drop to this reading level. So that way, it shows the importance of in-person learning and why you need it. But, you know, it did also, whatever their strength is, weaknesses, right? You know, it widened the opportunity gap as well. You know, some educators are overwhelmed. You know, you don't got that support system like you had within the classroom, within the school system. You know, you can't go to one of your buddy teachers that can help you out on how to handle adversity and challenges, you know, how to get all the students online to pay attention, to make sure their cameras on. So it's a lot. So it's pros and cons with the whole thing. It's getting better. I would say in March, it was a total different experience because the whole country had to shut down in regards to school. So we wasn't prepared for it. But August, we were prepared. Granted, the first 2 days of the hiccups with the technology issues, but I think now it's progressing. I see my son, because at his school, you know, they had the little subgroups. You work with your team, so they're still doing teamwork. They're still dividing up. Hey, you be the leader. You take the notes. We're going to circle back. We're going to do. So they're still trying to bridge that gap. So they're trying to still connect with your classmate, but it's a whole learning experience, you know. But it's, you know, we'll overcome this situation sooner or later, you know.
And Tiffany, your response to your own question?
Yeah, so I would say one of the things that has been beneficial for a lot of my students is being able to actually rewatch lectures not lectures. I'm not in college, but rewatch lessons and rewatch, you know, either videos of their teacher. Like if you think about it, a lot of times, you know, you go to school and you get what you can get while you're there in the classroom, and then after that, you come home and it's gone. A lot of teachers have been recording their lessons, like with them speaking, and so you can actually stop it and rewind it and you know, replay it over and over. So for a lot of my students, that you know, being able to go back and rewatch and re-listen to things has been tremendously helpful, especially those who have processing disorders and who, you know, in the classroom, they'll kind of sit there and completely be lost when the teacher is teaching, or they'll tune out. But here we can actually listen to a minute and pause it, take some notes, talk about it, listen for another couple minutes, pause it and talk about it. And so that is something that I think should continue. Like somehow, like recording lessons, making those available. It's helping with like being able to study for tests and things like that. It's really helpful. So I think, you know, you're not just rewarding the students who can function in a classroom and process the information in the classroom. You're also rewarding those students who, you know, may not have gotten it the first time around, but maybe they get it maybe the fifth or sixth time around, but they still get it. That's the point. So I think that's one of those things where I think we can definitely take a hybrid approach moving forward, having digital lessons available, but of course incorporating that in-person component too.
Yeah, but thank you.
One last thing I'll say that it also taught, especially my oldest son, you know, he became more independent, you know, waking up, you know, logging on, turning the camera on, going to his to-do list, looking at his assignments. Like you said, go back and reinforcing the recorded lessons and studying things like that. So he learned to be independent. You know, sometimes when you're in school, hey, how you get to this answer? How you get to that? Now you at home. Now you in your own comfort zone. You got to overcome those challenges and those barriers and become independent, you know, the learner to depend on yourself. So that's one thing I would say, but he just missing that, you know, talking to his friends, the personal level that they need, you know, the connection. But he definitely, I see a lot of independent you know, when he becoming more independent in regards to with the virtual learning and looking at his grades, I'm like, hey, check this. And I didn't even notice that even with him being independent, you know, teachers told me, hey, we teach for 30 minutes, but then the next 30 minutes, you're supposed to do independent study, do your work. I thought he had a break. He had more breaks than me, you know, but, you know, he's learning now thanks to back to school night. So I found out the different what he's supposed to do.
And also about it, I'm sorry, Anthony, a digital technological world. And so I do think that there is some, I've seen some progression with my students actually just being able to use a computer. I know when we were growing up, you know, we were learning it. We had like computer class and computer time, and we had little games that like taught us how to type and all of that. So, you know, they know how to use their phones, but with a lot of the computer programs and just being able to navigate the computer, a lot of them have been doing awesome with it. And they've even gotten so much better with it over the past couple of months. So I will say that that's another advantage. They're learning how to use the computer in a digital world. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you both for providing some, you know, silver linings, some good practices that we learned, you know, throughout the pandemic, and not just, you know, really highlighting the bad things that we all are all too familiar with. But thank you, Dontrell Smith. Thank you, Tiffany Brown, for making this such a fruitful conversation. It was, you know, a joy to learn a little bit more about Dontrell Smith, a Ward 7 candidate for the State Board of Education, and the founder and CEO of Gillis Education, Tiffany Brown. I will end with this final question for each of you. For Tiffany, as you, since you haven't voted yet, as you cast your ballot, what are the main issues that you're going to be considering when you make that decision, and what are the issues that other voters possibly should consider? And Dontrell, I would give you the last word to really tell voters what differentiates you from the other candidates for the Ward 7 SBOE position. Tiffany?
So as I cast my ballot, either today or tomorrow, I'm going to do the drop in the box. But I think for me, it's really the ability to collaborate with whoever I choose. And so I want to be able to feel comfortable and know that when I voice a concern or, when I have a question, that person is really open to hearing from me and actually going to collaborate with me and other members of the community to make a difference. And so I'm also looking for a plan. So somebody who has concrete ideas and creative ideas, because we're in a time that we do need to get creative and we do need to do the work to make sure that our kids are good in life. So I'm looking for a collaborative spirit and a go-getter, let's do this, here's my plan type of attitude. So those I think are the top two things that I'm looking for, not just at the presidential level, looking for that too, but at the local level as well.
And Dontrell, thank you, Tiffany. And Dontrell, what differentiates you from your rivals for this seat?
One thing about me, first, thank you for allowing me to speak here today. The difference about me is my passion. I'm focused. I'm honest. I got confidence, and I'm gonna be engaged. Like I say, my 3 points behind me: accountability. Hold people accountable. I'm transparent. I'm gonna be more transparent than anyone ever had. And I want education equity. Like I said, if I'm elected, I'm gonna be the first State Board of Education rep of color with school-aged children. Those words, those that I said, those are traits that describe me, my personality. The students, the parents, the teachers in the community, Those are the stakeholders I'm going to fight for. You know, Ward 7 needs someone that's going to take the charge, that's not afraid, that's going to be motivating, that's going to advocate, and going to reconnect the ward. And it all starts, like in the perfect world, tone at the top. It starts at the top. If the top ain't right, how are we going to get the bottom and the foundation right? And like I said earlier, if we waiting for someone outside the ward to drive this change, we're going to be in for a long haul. But I'm the person, I am the leader that we needs to represent this ward. I got a platform. I got a vision. I got a plan that's going to bring the change. And I guarantee you this, like I said, it's a 4-year term. 2 years, it's going to be changed. And it's going to be changed for the good. And like I said, I'm a parent. So any decision I make, not only in Ward 7, but in the District of Columbia, will have a direct impact, not only just y'all and your 9-month-old child, but my 3-year-old, my 13-year-old sons. No one else can say that. So any decision where I will have a direct impact. So today, Mr. and Mrs. Brown, as you think about your ballot, and Cassie, think about it. Really think about it. The current leadership been there for 8 years. School's going down, literacy rates not improving, things of that nature. So to find out more about me, Dontrell _7, FORWARD.com. Feel free to reach out. You probably seen all my blue and white signs, but it's a statement that I'm gonna bring, and that everyone see those signs. They say they everywhere, because I'm going to bring change everywhere in all Ward 7, regardless, not just Penn Branch, not just Hillcrest, Marshall Heights, Deanwood, Mayfair, Paradise, Park 7, River Terrace, the whole ward, because everyone has school-aged children. Everyone that has a voice, everyone has a voice, everything matters. Like my motto said, no child left behind, no door left behind. I'm going to every part of the ward to let people know that I want to bring the change that they need. Thank you so much. I appreciate this dialogue. Wish everyone the best. Go out and vote. Like she said earlier, state elections is very important as well, because they make the day-to-day decisions that will directly impact us, as well as the national level, as we got to get someone out of office. But as a federal government worker, you know. Thank you so much.
Again, thank you both for making this a great panel roundtable discussion. Special thanks to Tiffany Gillis Brown and Gillis Education for facilitating this. Please visit the gilliseducation.org website to find out more about the organization and other events like this. And again, thanks Dontrell for agreeing to participate and really allowing for this to be a personable and knowledgeable discussion. Again, everyone, remember that in-person early voting in DC starts next week, and it runs through to Election Day on November 3rd. Everyone, remember to vote. Have a great day. And again, thank you for joining us today.
Bye. Thank you.